Love Bugs, it's Dr. Ashley Greer here. Today, I want to come to you and talk about how you can set boundaries with people that they're actually going to want to follow. I almost called this video, soft boundaries are not weak boundaries, because that's essentially what I'm going to talk about today. But I imagine that the term soft boundary is perhaps something brand new to a lot of people and perhaps even a little bit confusing. Hey, Linda, great to see you. So I was just saying how I wanted to call this video soft boundaries versus weak boundaries, because I've been talking to a lot of clients lately about how to set boundaries. And I can't even tell you how many clients say, I don't really want to set boundaries. Boundaries feel mean to me. Boundaries feel cruel. It feels like I am putting up like a barrier between me and somebody else, like I'm pushing other people away, like I am distancing myself from other people. And that's not what boundaries are. That is essentially self-protection. However, the way most people talk about boundaries, that's what boundaries sound like, right? They sound like they're this giant wall that we put up in between us and somebody else. It sounds like it's like my way or the highway. It's like, get the hell out of here, like that kind of attitude, right? That's not how we want to set boundaries to be really uber successful and to feel good about setting boundaries, and not just for us to feel good, but other people to feel good about the boundaries we set as well. We want to set boundaries that feel soft and feel inviting and like basically invite other people to meet our needs, because boundaries are essentially setting standards. Boundaries are essentially setting up what it is that we expect from other people, what it is that we need from other people. And so if we make it easy for other people to meet our needs, then other people are far more likely to meet our needs, instead of being like, you do this or you get out of here, right? Like that kind of attitude isn't going to attract anybody. You know, it's like the old saying, you attract more flies with honey than with vinegar. You will get more people to respect your boundaries, and you're going to want to set them more if you actually are able to approach them from this soft place rather than this really harsh, you know, jerk face kind of way. And this sense that you have to be all or nothing, and that they have to follow your boundaries, or everything's lost and you have to push them out of your life, that kind of a thing. Everybody's going to lose if we come from that perspective. So what are soft boundaries and weak boundaries? Because like I said, I almost entitled this video, soft boundaries are not weak boundaries. Soft boundaries are boundaries that allow some permeability, right? We want people to be able to travel through our boundaries. We want people to be able to reach us. We don't want our boundaries to be such firm barriers that they serve as self-protection and they just serve to shove other people out and away from us. We want our boundaries to be invitations for people to help us meet our needs. We want our boundaries to be invitations for people to step up and to meet our needs. Like I said, we want our boundaries to be invitations, period. And so I'm going to give you some examples of soft versus weak boundaries. Weak boundaries, on the other hand, are these boundaries that are like not really boundaries. It's like, oh, don't do that, when the dog's, you know, on the couch and you don't really mean it, and the dog knows you don't mean it, so the dog gets up on the couch every time. That's a weak boundary. That's a boundary you don't really mean. A soft boundary is just putting your boundary, phrasing your boundary, being able to express your boundary in a way that other people can hear and other people can receive, so that other people can give to you. Because when you're demanding and when you're like, meet my needs or else, people don't want to meet those needs. So boundaries are invitations, helping others meet our needs. Yes, absolutely. Boundaries are invitations, and boundaries are not meant to be this structure that's meant to keep us safe, because self-protection is not the same thing as boundaried. Actually, you know, if we talk about if we talk about a spectrum, we're going to talk about being completely boundaryless on this side, where people just dump all over us. Then there's weak boundaries, where we sort of set boundaries, but we don't really mean it. So if anybody ever does anything that doesn't, that violates the boundary, we don't do anything about it. And so they don't really follow those boundaries. In the middle are, is like these soft boundaries, these invitations for other people to meet our boundaries. Up here is maybe these strong boundaries, or these, hard boundaries, firm boundaries. We hear that a lot. You've got to have firm boundaries. Yes, we have to have firm commitment to standing by our boundaries, but we don't have to be firm with other people in order to get our boundaries respected. And then way over here is self-protection, where we're just putting up walls to keep other people out. And I think way too many people think that that's what boundaries are. They're just walls keeping everybody out. And that doesn't serve anybody any good. And, we can't invite in beautiful relationships. We can't invite in, clients. We can't invite in awesome things into our life if we're all protected, Or if we've got these weak boundaries that basically invite people to walk all over us because we won't do anything we aren't firmly committed to having our boundaries met. So when we talk about firm boundaries, we want to talk about, we have a firm commitment to our boundaries. It's not that we have to be firm with other people. It's not that we have to be assholes to other people. It's not that we have to be jerks in order to get our boundaries met. That's a very kind of masculine way to have your boundaries, respected. Like, no, do it this way, Again, it's that whole notion of, getting more flies with honey than with vinegar. And so I've given you an example of a weak boundary, what that looks like. When you don't really mean the boundary, you set a boundary like, no dogs on the couch. And then you're lonely sitting on the couch. So you're like, come here, Fido. And you invite him to sit on the couch with you. Well, that dog knows he's going to be able to get on the couch anytime he wants now, because you're not actually having a firm commitment to the boundary you set. You're the one who is sort of like, meh, wishy-washy about your boundaries. Now, soft boundaries, on the other hand, are a completely different thing, and they're a completely new way to consider boundaries. Soft boundaries are about providing people an opportunity to meet your boundaries and feel as though they're doing something that makes them feel really good. So what this might look like is, let's talk about that dog, for example, and this is going to be hard, because it's not about people, but that dog, if you have soft boundaries, but not weak boundaries with that dog, because you have a firm commitment to not having on your couch, it might look like, you feel guilty when that dog is sitting on the floor. So you get him a nice bed. Or you feel lonely when you're up on the couch by yourself. So you sit on the floor with the dog. You're still committed to your firm commitment to yourself that the dog isn't going to be on the couch with you, but you're able to work and be flexible so that you can have everybody's needs being met. Let's talk about this with people, though, because people are where it's at. People are where we want to know about setting boundaries, right? So when it comes to, say, relationships, here's one that I talked to recently about a client with, or talked to a client with about. They're talking about setting boundaries with bosses who are sort of saying one thing and doing another, right? And they're like, well, what do I do when my boss is constantly saying I need to do this thing, but then they don't do it? Like, let's say it's everybody's got to be firmly on time at work every day, but then the boss waltz in 45 minutes late every day, right? And they get more and more angry and more and more angry. And this is what happens when you don't establish these soft boundaries that are inviting to other people. You feel like your boundaries are being violated even though you haven't established them. And then you get really mad and you flame out when people don't meet your boundaries that nobody knows actually exist yet. And so the boss keeps coming in late and you get more and more frustrated, more and more angry, and you get more and more frustrated being at work, and you lose all this respect for your boss when you could have went in there after a couple times and he's late every day and saying something like, so I noticed that you said that there was a really firm, thing about being on time, but I noticed you kind of squeak in a little bit late. Is there a little bit of flexibility there? You're asking, can my needs be met, i.e., can I be a little bit late too, without that person going on the defensive of, why are you late? Why do you get to be late and I don't get to be late? Because that person's going to go straight on the defensive and they're not going to want to meet your needs. They're not going to want to answer your questions. They're not going to want to do any of these things. Let's talk about this in terms of relationships. Relationships is a great one. When we're talking to our spouse about what we need, or our partner or whatever about what we need, and what we need is, say, this I all the time encountered in couples therapy when I used to do couples therapy as a psychologist, is women would be like, I want flowers. I want him to be romantic, and he's never romantic. And I would say to her, because it would usually be the her, and then it would be the him. It could be a same-sex marriage, though, or same-sex relationship, too. I would say, did you ask? Did you ask? Did you set the expectation? Did you set the standard? Did you actually make the request? Did you make the invitation for him to be romantic? Did you express to him how important that was to you? Well, no, he should be able to know that. Why should he be able to know what's important to you and what would make you happy without you telling him? That's not really fair, now is it? Now, the woman, a lot of times, because she has all this built up resentment because she hasn't established those boundaries earlier on, or established her invitation, established her standard earlier on, she's angry. And so then she'll try to set the boundary from this angry place, this aggressive place that goes, why aren't you ever romantic? Why don't you bring me flowers? God, it would make me feel, kind of appreciated if I got some flowers or something. Nobody wants to freaking come through when somebody's demanding something, right? We want to be invited to something. So instead, if she came to a place where she was feeling calm and she was feeling centered, and she went to her husband and said, you know what? I really feel so loved and appreciated when you bring me flowers and I'm not expecting it. Like it really, I'm not sure you even realize how important that is to me, to feel that kind of connection with you when I feel like you're thinking about me, but I wasn't even expecting it. Like it's even more important to me than you fixing the car, etc. This goes into love languages as well, which is a whole other topic, but this goes into all of this, you know, this really makes me feel loved. And I really need you to do this, you know, even if it's once a week and it's flowers, or if it's, you know, my favorite candy bar at the grocery store, or if it's, you know, just sending me I love you text in the middle of the day. Those things mean they mean a lot to me. That guy wants to make you, or that girl, whatever, wants to make you happy. And when you approach it that way, they're going to come to you and be like, wow, how can I do this for you? Wow, how can I come through and be this person that you've asked me to be, because you gave me an invitation to be this person that makes you happy. Of course I want to do that. Of course I want to meet your standards. Of course I want to meet your expectations. Of course I want to conform to the boundary, the soft boundary that acted more as an invitation. Now let's talk about this in terms of clients. If let's say you have a client, I do this a lot, where I have people who are in my inbox. You know, they're up in my PMs, you know, all the time. This is something that actually used to frustrate me a lot, when people would be, you know, talking to me a lot about stuff in my private messenger, because I save my private messenger for my one-on-one clients. And instead of being frustrated now, all I do is I say to the person, love, I so love what you're sharing. And I would so love to go deeper with this. If you'd like to talk about doing one-on-one coaching, that'd be amazing. This is how you do that. I also provide group coaching in my membership space. If you'd like to talk, you know, post in there. I would love to hear from you in there if you'd like to join that. But otherwise, I really have to reserve this space for those who are paying for it in order to respect them. I hope you understand. That person doesn't feel rejected. That person doesn't feel abandoned. That person doesn't feel like not listened to. That person actually feels as though they're being respected by me setting a boundary, because they realize that then if they do decide to do coaching with me, that I respect the coaching we do together so much that I'm setting boundaries with folks who haven't stepped into that relationship with me, right? This is what setting boundaries is about. It's just about providing people opportunities to make us happy, providing people opportunities to understand how things work. And when we don't communicate ourselves clearly, and when we don't communicate ourselves in a way that feels really like balanced and comes from a place of love, then we're coming from this really aggressive place that's about like, why aren't you doing this? In this angry place, in this flamed out place, in this frustrated place. That's where most people end up setting boundaries from. And the reason most people end up setting boundaries from that place is they don't have the boundaries put up in the first place. They don't have the boundaries set up in the first place because they fear that if they set up boundaries, they're a jerk. So then what happens is they've set up a dichotomy in their brain that boundaries mean jerk. And so if I set them up at the beginning, that means I'm a jerk. So I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to set up any boundaries, or I'm going to make them weak and totally, you know, everybody can walk all over them. Or once people, you know, violate those boundaries and really make me upset, then that gives, you know, then I can be a jerk, because that's when you get to be a jerk and you set the boundaries. Boundaries don't make you a jerk. Boundaries actually give you the opportunity to be far more loving, far more caring, far more present with people, right? Like when my clients understand that they, you know, when people who aren't my clients, let's say, understand that they can't just private message me all the time, that allows me to be far more present with my clients, right? That allows me to be far more present with those people who have decided to work with me. When I decide I have a boundary around work calls can't happen after X, you know, 6 p.m. at night or something like that, right? Or I'm not going to respond to my client emails after 6 p.m. at night because that's my family time. I can actually be far more present with my family, and I can actually be far more invested in my family. When I am communicating from a place of soft boundaries instead of a place of these firm, hard, harsh boundaries, I'm actually communicating myself in a way that's vulnerable, and in a way that's open, in a way that's open-hearted, and in a way that's loving, because it's saying, you know, it really matters to me when things happen this way. You know, I really care about you, but I can't do it like this, right? Because firm boundaries are like, no, my way or the highway. They don't explain themselves. They're like, you know, like prison rules or something. Like the prison warden isn't saying like, I understand that you'd like your freedom, but that doesn't work with the sentence you've been given and would really hurt the feelings of your of the people you violated and your crimes. You know, they're not going to explain things like that. That's what prison rules are for, right? When we explain ourselves and we're able to, and I don't mean like justifying yourself, that's a totally different thing for another topic, but when we explain ourselves and explain why things matter and explain why boundaries are the way that they are, we respect both people and we foster closer relationships and we foster more intimacy and we foster more connection. And so boundaries can actually be your tool for more connection, more love, more heart-based everything. So if you have any questions, I see there's a bunch of people who have joined or have been on here. Let me know. I'm happy to come back later and answer your questions as well. But that was a little mini training on soft boundaries versus weak boundaries and how to set boundaries so that other people want to follow them. All right. Till next time, I'm Dr. Ash. And if you want more info on working with me in one-on-one or in my membership site, shoot me a private message. I'm happy to talk to you. Don't worry, it's different if you're sending me a private message about stuff like that and you're not my client. I didn't mean to say I hate hearing from anybody who's not my client, but sometimes peeps are asking for coaching when they're not my client, and that's when I have to set the boundary. All right. Till later.